redo it.
Yeah.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers to
for
you.
the second time. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving to you. And my brother's back home watching football. I guess this is better that we're watching this, right? So tell me.
I was going to ask you when you said you were watching football. I was going to ask why you weren't watching this.
At this point, I'd probably rather watch football because if I'm with my brother, especially, because that's what's going to. I love watching sports that I don't watch that often, and I haven't yet. As much as I love watching CT. And I know I just can't get into four-man heats in the Challenger Series.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, but that's what the Challenger Series as opposed to the CT. I mean, you were weaned on four-man heats, right?
It's not the four-man heatness of it. Oh, you know what it really is? The truth of it is that at some point, whenever I started surfing, every single aspect of surf was fascinating to me. Every possible thing, like, we used to drive by in Santa Monica. There was a place called Weber Exterminators. It was an extermination service that happened to have the same name as Weber Surfboards, and I would get stoked just seeing this Weber sign that in my head was where they made. I knew it really wasn't, but like everything was amazing. It was everything associated with the thing I was so into meant the world, and I was thinking like that was 52 years ago, which is pretty amazing. And one way to look at that whole long thing is just how, for a long time, things are still opening up, but also what keeps happening is things just start getting smaller. There was a point after about, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years where I realized I didn't really enjoy going to surf movies as much as I used to.
Right.
And then I started especially after I worked in a surf shop, I didn't even really want to I didn't really like going into surf shops anymore. And then I didn't, there were certain surf breaks. Suddenly after I'd lived in San Francisco for enough years, I go, I'm not going to surf Santa Cruz anymore because it's just, it was too crowded. So like a lot of my surf life is just getting smaller. And while I still, when it comes to surf, like watching any kind of surf on a screen, like CT contests are the only thing that I will arrange my schedule for. The rest of it I can kind of do without more and more. I don't need Mason Ho clips aside. I don't go out of my way to look at anything. And so I don't know. Actually, I love this. I love Haleiwa when it looks like this. This always looks really fun when there's a little bit of onshore on it. You can tell what we're watching later on. So I probably would end up watching this if I were by myself. But I'm just kind of standing by. I'm kind of in hibernation for CT.
Everything you just explained, I don't know what you would even call it. Is it an attrition or something that happens with surfing?
That's a perfect word for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been experiencing as well, and it came up organically, but it ties into so many of my notes that I wanted to ask you about things, in terms of moving away from surfing, or moving away from the beach, I should say.
Yeah.
Also in terms of like, all we talk about is surfing. Our jobs revolve around surfing. Right. Do you get exhausted? And we'll get to all that stuff, but why is it that the more you got into the act of surfing itself, the less you enjoyed the, association with the sport or the ephemera or the films or what? What do you think it is?
I think the films, this is zero disrespect to the guys who just did the 4K remaster on Morning of the Earth. I was at Florida Surf Film Festival last week, in fact. And, kind of one of the highlight things was Morning of the Earth remastered 4K. Whatever 4K means. I don't know what it means actually, but
4,000 is what it means.
All I know, the thing I know about 4K, because I asked one of those, asked Wyatt Daly.
Yeah.
Without getting too technical, although 4,000 doesn't mean anything to me, but the Morning of the Earth file is, I think, 35 terabytes. So when you do something in 4K, that's how big the file is.
Crazy.
Which is nuts, right?
Crazy.
So anyway, I'm like, Morning of the Earth, I saw it in a theater when I was 12. It was great. It changed my life. It was so beautiful. It was country soul and Byron Bay and Michael Peterson and the cutback and everything, And it comes on and it wasn't just that it was slow. I was expecting it to be slow. It's a slow, it is literally like as much of a poem to drug use as it is to surfing, in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
It's that, and again, I love Albie Fowles on it as well, but like 3 or 4 or 5 waves of Batty Trelaw at Angary is great. But like there were 25 waves. Right. And at the 25th wave, you're going, and it's like that doesn't build. It's just a bunch of great waves, some better than others, ridden by the same guy Wyatt and Justin, I love you, and Albie, I know you probably don't listen, I love you too, but man, I just got about 40 minutes into it and did a French exit. I was done. I couldn't watch anymore. So the surf movies, I remember even really early, like if Lopez gets blown out of a tube, they'd always show that pretty early in the film because you come out hot. The second tube you show of second time you see Lopez getting blown out of a tube, well, you just saw it. It doesn't work as well. So the surf movies things was always, that to me was always pretty obvious why I wasn't that into it, because there's just nothing much there. Surf shops I kind of still got a kick out of going into, but I think that just came from working in one for too long. I worked in a surf shop for like 4 years maybe and put in a lot of hours. And so by the time I finally, I didn't get my gold watch. What would you get if you were working in my gold leash or something?
Not even gold though.
Yeah.
You get a bar of wax.
Right, I got my free bar of wax, and I was kind of done with that too.
So I'm wondering if it's just exposure. We have so much content and stimulation from the surf world from all angles now that something like Morning of the Earth is just slow and it falls on deaf ears. Unless it's over the top intense, stimulating every single receptor, then it's just almost
the
dull.
thing about those restorations and everything, and I support them 100%. There's a group in Australia who's they're restoring, I think it's called the Australian and New Zealand Film Archive, and they're doing great work. And they just had a fundraiser, and I sent them, EOS sent them $50 it doesn't really have, because I think it's great that they're doing it. But like when I see, I'm not that into, for history's purpose, 100% I'm into it. But like for me, entertainment wise or whatever, what does excite me is give me Morning of the Earth so I can start chopping it up to make videos for Encyclopedia of Surfing. Like I just want to take something and then mess it. I don't want to recut Morning of the Earth, but I could do a great. About 4 years ago, one of the first brave things I did with EOS was, I don't know what prompted this, but I took the whole Cape St. Francis sequence from Endless Summer, and I recut it to a Dave Clark 5 song. I just picked up the pace on it, and I just did a few things with the frames per second, and I also made part of it. I just made it shorter, which I seem to want. And so when I see this stuff now, like Morning of the Earth, I would just go, God, I could love to just take that and do something with it. Like, almost the way, like, I guess people would like to take something, you've sampled it and then make something sort of new out of it.
You're like the Jay-Z of surfing.
Yeah,
sampling old beats. It sounds like what you want. You like working. You like your project that you're working on, and you don't necessarily want to just be entertained by surfing anymore.
Everything gets filtered through what it can or can't do for EOS at this point. That's how I see almost everything come in. Except, like, again, this is part of why I love watching CT, because it doesn't have anything to do with what I'm doing.
It does, though. I mean, this stuff's all going to become a part of your dialogue.
Okay, it's not. You know why? Because, and I'll give Surf Splendor ears an exclusive right here, or a first.
Let's hear it.
I in my mind, about 6 months ago, I've just started calling it the Encyclopedia of 20th Century Surfing, because every time something happens, it puts me further. I can't stand anymore feeling like I keep falling further and further and further behind. Like the website is already so out of date. So many of the pages are out of date, and so somebody else will come along and pick up what I've done and do it. But I can't have it be the Encyclopedia of Surfing being worked by one full-time guy and one part-time guy. It's just like, it's ridiculous.
What about the Wikipedia of surfing?
That's a different project. And if, again, I've thought about like, I thought about how cool it would be is if on every page, like say you went to,
Reno Abalera.
Say you went to Reno Abalera's page and you read my EOS page on Reno, and you would see below that all the links to the other things that I've made or archived or grabbed about Reno. So there's the Encyclopedia of Surfing version of that. And if I just always thought, what if you could just press a button and like one of those, you know how they have those in like Batman, the wall would reverse around. And so here's the books facing out like right here. And that's the Encyclopedia of Surfing. Then it would flip around, like literally on screen, you flip around and just get the Reno Abalera wiki page, which would be everybody editing, writing, posting, comments forever. And then it's just a whole different take on Reno. Because right now, EOS, you know, it's really curated. Everything on there is stuff that I've either written or selected, right? So in that I do try to be... I try to tell the truth as best as I know it, but you know, I'm curating it, so you know, it's all getting filtered through me, so right. It's not the whole thing, and I don't know, you know, I don't know what a wiki in the surf world would look like. I love that EOS does not home to any of the chaos, like it's just not a place where people are just flinging comments around. Well, actually, there's no... Even when I did have comments on there, everybody was pretty polite and respectful. But I think a wiki page on surf is, you know, I mean, I don't know if it would descend to sort of beach grit level of back and forth. It wouldn't. I don't
you'd
think
have
it would
to moderate it.
Yeah, which I don't have time. But anyway,
you're right. It's a different business, but it's worth somebody doing.
Absolutely.
It's worth you. Yeah. You're kind of the best person to do, or your property is the best one to host it.
Right.
I know you don't have the time, but because so much of it, the surf world's still really small, and there's so many people who have individual stories about Reno.
Right.
And it'd be awesome if there was a place for all those stories to live together.
Agreed.
And that's what I kind of find interesting from doing what I'm doing is I get so much feedback from people. After I publish an episode, somebody will then contact me and be like, oh my God, here's my story. Like Izzy Paskowitz, 2 weeks ago, I published an episode. 5 people email me and they're like, I went to that surf camp. Here was my experience. Or I encountered him, you know, in Mexico and this was my experience. And it's great that I have those dialogues with people, but it'd be cooler to make them public, you know?
It's a great project and somebody should do it. You know, exactly. I mean, it's just.
So, okay, let me get back to the reason why we're here. What is your day job? What do you do? What do you do 8 to 5 Monday through Friday?
I don't do anything except Encyclopedia of Surfing and hang out with my wife and kid. I mean, literally.
So what does the encyclopedia consist of for you? What is the job?
Yeah, it's funny. It's changed a little. It's changed a bit over the past 3 years because the Encyclopedia of Surfing started off as a book, a reference book, that big fat book. And I go, well, it'd be a good idea to make a website out of that. And I did. And then I added History of Surfing to that. So then it became like 2 sites. Then I added this interview book that I did a long time ago called Above the Roar. That's all Q&A stuff. So now it's like Encyclopedia of Surfing, History of Surfing, and like, and you know, my version of Andy Warhol's interviews where it's just all that Q&A. Then I added another section which is all videos. Then I added another section which was contest results. And then I added a surfboards page. All of it's under the umbrella of Encyclopedia of Surfing. But it's actually got all these different areas. I can just, so within that, it's like sort of like Disneyland's this big place that, you know, you have Frontierland over here and Futureland and Small World or whatever. So EOS, and it's, you know, the site's all color coded now and everything. And I can fit as much stuff as I want to or could ever imagine into those areas. And I can just build that forever. Great. So that should have probably been it. But at some point, Lewis Samuels, before the site even went up, said, you know, you're going to have to do a blog. And I didn't really want to do a blog. And I did. It's not really very bloggy. It's just some stuff that doesn't fit anywhere else on the site goes on the blog. So that was okay. And then at some point about 3 years ago, I thought I should do a newsletter. And that evolved into the Sunday Joint. And I've gone back recently and looked at the early joints, and they're so short. And all they were supposed to be, the Sunday Joint was only supposed to be me telling subscribers what just went up in the previous week.
Right.
And the Sunday Joint now, so that was the newsletter about the website. And the Sunday Joint has become it occupies such a big place in my head right now with that. It's like I'm now doing the website to create a better Sunday Joint. Like the Sunday Joint is the thing that's in the foremost of my mind most of the week. And I'm literally, and it's unfortunate because the joint should not be directing how and where and what part of the thing I build pages on, but it does, because I want the joint. The joint's the thing is the forward-facing part of EOS. It's the part that I enjoy the most doing. I swear I didn't want to write anymore, and the joint's a weird way of writing because it's just a newsletter and it's very informal. But I just love writing those things. I love doing the graphics for it. It's got sort of a format that I tweak a little bit each week, but it's something that every time I pull up sort of a blank, almost like a template, and I just fill it, tweak it, make it, and I just love working on that thing. It destroys my weekend.
Yeah, it's conversational.
That's what it is.
The style of it is.
And the other thing I realize, it's not just that I love it for the sake of doing it, but I love it because the joint's the thing that I think EOS ought to sort of be resting on, because while everybody says they want to preserve surf history, everybody says they want to have this thing that's archiving and a reference, but it's not moving, it's not coming at you, it's not doing anything. Right. You say, oh, here, I'd like to give you a check to keep doing your work. Maybe you will, I hope you would, or maybe I'll even subscribe. But if I'm producing the thing every Sunday that is giving, you open it up and it's fun to read, and then it's got the, as you're reading something about, Reno, for example, it's going to send you off onto these different links. Like as I'm riffing on Reno, and I said, by the way, he wrote the best surf contest article of the decade in '74 for the Smirnoff contest, and here it is. Then someone's going to go over to that, and just stumbling upon Reno's Smirnoff article on its own, you might get into it. But if I've just set it up in a way,
context.
Then from there you can go, oh, the Smirnoff, that was a great contest. And how many Smirnoffs were there? And there's some links at the bottom that'll take you to the first one that was in Santa Cruz in 1969, where the people who lived in the locals fucking pushed the judges' stand off the cliff because they didn't want the contest there, So Crazy. All of a sudden you're into a whole Smirnoff thing, and you're 2 or 3 steps removed from the joint, but the joint is how you got there.
Yeah.
So the joint is satisfying to work with, for me to work on. I love all the interaction I have with people on Monday and part of Tuesday. So that goes my Monday, by the way. But it's also the thing I think that animates all of the rest of the site that otherwise is just sort of there waiting for you, but not coming toward you. The joint comes toward.
The joint's active.
Exactly.
So I've had this epiphany recently. The way I can relate to what you're saying is I started Surf Splendor just interviewing people. Mm-hmm. And that's what I actually enjoy doing the most. When I look back, that's the work I'm most proud of. I'll go back and find archive episodes and I'll listen to it. And I'm like, man, this has value, right?
How long ago did you start?
2013.
So you're coming up on 10 years.
Yeah, coming up. But then I started doing a news show with Scott Bass, and then eventually kind of a gossipy news show with Chaz.
Right.
And those now feel like actual work to me, because if I'm recording on a Tuesday, Monday, I'm scrambling to find relevant topics and pre-produce the show. And then once I'm done with it, I got to do the post-production, and it's this endless hamster wheel, right? And by the time I finish the show with Scott, I'm now pre-producing the show for Chaz, and it's just feels like a burden every week.
Well, are you ever going to? So you're doing that? If you'll excuse a crude question, just because that's how you make more money, right? By having the 3 shows?
No, no. It's because it's what the people wanted.
Right,
I mean, listeners. 8 years ago when I first started, they're like, well, we'd like to hear contest results. So
Right.
Scott and I, that's kind of what we started doing. And then Chaz I interviewed for Surf Splendor a couple of times, and they're like, we want to hear more from him.
So tell me real quick, those are the three properties, those are the three
that my voice is on.
Right.
Yeah.
So in your head, these are like your three children, say, like how are they differentiated? Tell me a little, I mean, I've listened to all three of them, but how is it in your head?
It's all
Start with Surf Splendor.
So the concept was I enjoyed listening to podcasts, and there was no surf podcasts. And I lived in Southern California, so I had access to a lot of people in the surf industry, and I was working in the surf industry. So I thought, you know what? There's probably 20 people in the world who would want to hear a surf podcast where there's interviews with people. So I will do this just as I love surfing. Surfing's been great to me. This will just be my little gift back to the surf world.
Was that one of your first ones with Parrish?
Third. Yeah. First was Chris Cote.
No way.
Because
really?
Transworld Surf had just closed. So I interviewed him about the closure of that.
Right.
20 people listened, or 40 people or whatever, and started emailing me and hey, we loved that interview. I wanted to know why Chris Cote, what that story was. And then interview number 2 is Morgan Mawson and Aaron Chang about surf photography. Because Aaron Chang was established, he had a gallery.
Right.
And then Morgan was traveling with Kelly and Dane and working for Apple. Literally did the back cover advertisement for Apple for I don't know what magazine, and it was a $10,000 shoot, which would take forever to earn in the surf world. So him kind of transitioning, that was interesting. And then Tom Parrish was number 3, which was a totally different vibe because he's much more historic.
But it was you picking out people that you thought were interesting and sort of asking the questions that you want. It was just sort of going to go where it was going to go.
Yeah.
And then
there was no incentive. There's no money. And even when I started with Chaz and Scott, there was still no business model. Right. It was just totally a passion project. But the point is, it was for listeners. It was what does the listener want?
Right.
And I figured there would be a business model along the way, and nobody else is willing to do all this work because it really became a 40-hour-a-week job at a certain point.
Right.
And so if I can kind of gain all this runway, by the time a business model comes in place, I will just have 300 reps under my belt, all the know-how, all the connections, maybe the respect from kind of the peers and and so I could just implement the business model and run with it. And that's kind of what has actually happened.
Yep.
But really it's based on in terms of the style of content, it's based on the magazines.
Right.
Here's long form interviews.
Right.
Here's contest results. You go to the back, here's the gossip column saying who changed sponsors.
You mean the 3 things that you do, put them together and you've got a magazine.
Correct.
Right.
It's all the different sections of the magazine, that you would get once a month. We're now doing once a week, essentially.
What's the bass one called again?
The what?
There's one you do with Scott. It's called
Spit.
That's right.
Spit.
That's right.
But my point to kind of what you're talking about with the joint being active is I prefer Surf Splendor. I feel like that has more value for posterity. And this other thing feels like the hamster wheel that I'm just on every week and I can never get away from and I can never kind of get ahead of. But when I look back, I'm so glad I was on that hamster wheel because it forced me to engage with surfing.
Right.
Whereas left to my own devices, that attrition that we started talking about,
right.
I would have kind of turned my back from surfing. I would have done these interviews, but I would have just not been watching the contest. I wouldn't have been caring about, I don't know what, who's changed sponsors or who Kelly's dating or whatever it is. And the fact that I forced myself to engage with all of that stuff makes me love it. Right. I have a love for this thing now that I was intensely kind of engaged in for all these years that I would have otherwise spent that time watching Netflix or something stupid.
I got the sense though that with, I haven't listened to Spit. I've listened to Spit a little bit, but my thing with whenever I tune into, to the Grit is that, Surf Splendor is you working as a solo act and you and Charlie both have gotten better at bouncing off each other. You've been doing that for 2 or 3 years or something?
Yeah, at least 3, I think.
And it feels like it, I like listening to the two of you go back and forth more so now than at the beginning because I think you guys are more comfortable with each other.
So at the beginning, my thought was, Chaz is the provocateur. I'm just going to tee him up to be a provocateur, right? that got old real quick. And he's actually less interested in playing that role. And so I would let him say asinine things and I wouldn't really confront him on them. So then after 6 months or whatever, it was like, okay, now I'm going to like confront him on these things.
Right.
And I think there was a period of time where he wasn't really prepared to defend his stance.
Right.
He thought he could just say asinine things.
Right.
And he'd get away with it. And then I'd be like, well, yeah, but what about that person's feelings, you know?
Right.
And he'd be like, I don't know. So then that was an awkward phase of the relationship. And then it's got to the point where he's actually smart enough and he has a reason that he's feeling the way that he's feeling. And he's smart enough to actually communicate through it. And he's prepared now to do that.
Right.
So we have much more kind of banter. The latest phase, though, is we really just lean into the comedy. Like,
Right.
we'll say asinine things because it's funny.
Right.
And then just continue to make jokes about it, you
Right.
know? And
Right.
I think the audience is aware of that as well. And they don't take us super seriously if we are
Right.
saying something completely salacious about Kelly or Laird or whatever it is.
Do you listen to Cocaine and Rhinestones? We talked about this
Yeah,
before.
yeah. Yeah,
So,
I haven't listened in a while, but I did listen for a long time.
so I'm fascinated
Music
by...
podcast for listeners.
Right.
Recommendation.
It's a history of 20th century country western music. And I love it. I'm absolutely addicted to it. But I also find the guy who hosts it, Tyler Mahan Coe, is fascinating to me because he seems like, by default, he's a real dick. Like just seems like a kind of a jerk, actually. When he does Cocaine and Rhinestones, he's really well read on the subjects. He takes the show in all kinds of directions that you don't expect it to go. It's really discursive, which I like because he always seems to bring it back to something. I mean, he did a whole 20-minute intro. The whole season 2 is about George Jones, the country singer George Jones. So, and there's all kinds of stuff. I think we're like 11 episodes into a 22 episode season or something, and we're just in the middle of the whole thing with him and Tammy Wynette. So it's going, but it's taking that, and he does 2-hour episodes, and he'll do a 20-minute thing on 17th century bullfighting. And I don't think anyone knows, although he claims it's all going to make sense later, but he goes way out there. There was a whole thing on the Catherine de Medici. There was a whole thing on the history of ice cream. A whole thing on the history of pinball. And partly, I don't really give a shit if he ties it up because the discursive thing is so great. And I think he actually is going to try to tie it all together. So when I listen to him do this, how prepared he is, he does a thing that I love and I've been striving to do sort of since before I heard of Cocaine and Rhinestones. But he'll work very factually and very almost sort of formally, but then he'll drop in language, and he doesn't talk with a southern accent. So you're listening to the thing about country western music where it doesn't seem tied to the South or anything. So
Right.
Even though he is the son of David Allan Coe, famous country western outlaw performer, but he'll just be going along, and then he'll just go, if you think this was fucked up, wait till you haven't heard, he'll just drop in something where he's just talking to somebody like this, where the rest, the previous few minutes, it's almost like he's up speaking in front of
lecture.
Right. And so I really love that he's smart, but he's never too far from just talking like you're sitting next to him at a bar.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say, so it's Cocaine and Rhinestones is, again, well-researched, really tight. And he has this other podcast called Your Favorite Band Sucks. And he's been doing it for years with this other guy, a friend of his. And if you go look at the episode list, it's just every band you can imagine, from the Beatles to Beethoven, Stones, Bowie, everyone. And it's just it's like a parlor game. The two of them just start raving, and again, so then you're never more than 5 seconds from F-bombs and all kinds of shit, because it's just them ranting and raving about how, and it just seems like it might have been funny 10 years ago, but it seems like a thing that should have been funny for one season then done. But he's just a jerk. Like, why do that? Who cares if somebody likes listening to Aerosmith, whatever. I love some Aerosmith songs. They did 3 episodes on why Aerosmith sucks. So again, like, I can see you're grinning. It is funny. Aerosmith sucks in a lot of ways, but I'll listen to Train Kept Rolling every time it comes on the radio.
So you don't like that show as much?
Well, no, it makes me conflicted about how I feel about this guy who's giving me this really aggressively a really aggressively mean show, and then this other show that I just love. And then his Twitter feed, he's just a dick. He's a dick to people who respond to him on Twitter, and he's like a know-it-all,
Yeah.
So anyway, as it bounces back to me or EOS, I do wonder all the time in this day and age, sort of like what you were saying with grit versus Surf Splendor, is there a point at which the dichotomy, what one person can do, like being in Tyler Mahan Coe's case, just this abrasive jag off on this one podcast and this really thoughtful, intelligent, considered person on this podcast. And so like Sunday Joint, I'm in a whole different mood, and I'm not mean much anymore, but I'm in a whole different just prancing around mood for Sunday Joint versus all the stuff you'll read in History of Surfing or in on the Encyclopedia pages. Yeah. And that still to me seems really weird that you're even allowed to do that. Like you couldn't do that before. You had to kind of pick a lane, right?
Totally. So I've had listeners, very important people in the surf business as well, say, don't work with both Scott and Chaz anymore.
Me too, by the way. Same.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, what are you doing associating with Chaz?
Right.
For obvious reasons, Chaz, but believe it or not, over the years, just as many people say the same thing about Scott.
Why about Scott?
Different reasons. Like, Chaz knows that he's saying something provocative, salacious.
Right.
Scott doesn't.
What has Scott ever said that was...
Well, it might be anti-Brazilian. It might be anti-women, anti-female surfing. And it's not outrightly anti-female surfing. It's just he doesn't pay attention to female surfing.
Right.
And in today's climate, that looks like anti-female surfing.
Right.
So the audience, through the modern lens, is like, he's sexist.
Right.
And I know Scott, and he's not sexist. You know what I mean? So it's up to me to kind of parse the feedback and to see what value each of them have. And the reality is, so like I've made that assessment with Chaz where it's like, I think Chaz needs to be a little bit corralled and directed. If left to his own devices, he'll just sling mud. But he's smarter than that. And he's actually, criticism has tremendous value and it doesn't exist anywhere else in surfing. And so if I can help kind of guide him as in pre-production in terms of prepping the show, but also in terms of conversation, and then hold him accountable to actually be higher minded in his criticism.
Right.
There's real value here.
Right.
And I think that that's the point that we've gotten to, but it's taken years and years and years.
Right.
But to the part that you're kind of talking about is we, Tyler, yourself, myself, we're multifaceted people who have different moods and different. And so part of my life, I want to play Scrabble.
Right.
And the other part, I'm getting changed at the beach in the parking lot and I want to talk shit.
I almost don't question what I was just sitting here saying, how can you go this direction and that direction? And the truth is I kind of feel like to be doing what we're doing or what Tyler Mahan Coe's doing, you have to be that. Like where before you had to pick a lane, I feel now if you do pick a lane, because we're working in such, you've probably cut off a huge chance that you're going to be able to do anything. You kind of have to go this way. You have to have the good, the Instagram voice has to be different from what I'm going to put in a blog post, which is different from when I put it in the EOS page. So your grit thing is going to be different than what you're going to do with Surf Splendor and everything. So
yeah.
So then it just comes down to like how many hats can you wear. You asked me what I do in a week. I'm 60 hours a week putting on 7 or 8 different hats on behalf of Encyclopedia of Surfing, and I wear some of the hats better than others. I mean, the business part of it for me is so that's the hat that is the one that I put on the least often and looks the worst on me. So this, but I have to do it. I can't hire someone to do all that shit for me. So you just put on all these hats.
What does the business hat look like? How do you guys
just
have
in terms
funding?
of like
how do you have funding? What's the business model?
Well, the business model is subscribers and donors. That's it.
So what does a subscription cost?
Subscription costs $3 a month or $30 a year.
Okay.
And I have 2,400 subscribers. And then the donations have gone anywhere from $5 to $5,000, something like that.
Got it.
Yeah.
And how do you drum those things up? Because I don't see you advertising them.
I don't. I'm terrible at it. So I think that at this point, 2,400. It's what's the boutique, I guess they call it, but it's a small little thing, and I think that there's a certain I could be just turning a flaw into a virtue, but it's small enough that I can reply directly to everyone who gets in touch with me. So after the joint goes out on Sunday, that's the only part of my week. I hit send usually at about 6:00 on Sunday evening. And I exhale, and I go for a little walk, and then that's the only time of the week where I am 100%, I've set it down and I'm not thinking about it. Because the rest of the week.
Just for that 1 hour?
No, all the way until the next morning. Okay. And I also know that what Mondays is gonna be, which is sort of fun because it's sort of work, or it's part of, is again, another hat that I put on, is all I'm gonna do Monday is get in touch with everyone who sends in input about the Sunday joint.
Right. And
another thing you kind of got into a little bit ago about we talked about in terms of things shutting off about my surf experience. It's been a really conscious thing with me, and very natural and organic, to see how far I can do a joint or any other thing in Encyclopedia of Surfing. How far away from surfing can I get and have it actually still make sense? Because surfing stays interesting for me when it's bouncing off against things that aren't surf. And so I think I did a Sunday joint, I think it was last week's, where it really works because when I'm at my best is if I've just discovered something as well. So if I can discover something 6 hours before I'm joining about it, and this thing I discovered was...
Can I guess which one you're going to reference?
Yeah.
Pauline Kael.
No, I've known about her for years.
Oh,
well, no, but within that, what I had never... So yeah, within the Pauline Kael thing was I'd never seen or watched the dancer Sid Charisse.
I haven't either.
So within that Pauline Kael riff, I quoted something about her saying that when Sid Charisse throws her spangled leg over Fred Astaire, this was all because Pauline Kael loved middlebrow movies. So she's talking about this dumbass musical called Bandwagon, which is just a musical sing and dance, which I can't stand. But in this dance scene, Fred Astaire is like a gangster, and Sid Charisse is like a mall. How do you say the word mall? Mall, M-O-L-L. Sitting on a bar stool in a overcoat, looking at him just smoldering. And she looks at him, and all the music stops, and everyone's looking, and she just glides off the dance stool and removes. It's like a long spy jacket. Takes it off, and she's just wearing this red spangly dress cut up to the hip, right? And she goes out there and just starts dancing. And I know it's just a family G-rated movie, but it's like, oh my God, look, like the look she gives him. And then she famously in like the 50s had her legs insured for $5 million, some kind of publicity stunt. But just these, and she just throws her legs around Fred Astaire. And Pauline Kael says that when Sid Charisse throws her leg around Fred Astaire, you don't care that it looks like she learned her lines phonetically. Like she can't act, she can dance, right? And so Pauline Kael was loving that. So I got to like watch a few things of Sid Charisse dancing, and I found a picture that I used. So then the exciting part was I found a little picture of her in that dress, and it fit into my little picture grid and everything. And then the whole point of that was, I think that Pauline Kael had this blood feud with John Milius, who made Big Wednesday. And so the whole joint starts off with Pauline Kael, goes to Sid Charisse, and I took another couple of
Badlands, Terrence Malick.
Right. And then at the end, it's this scene where Pauline Kael and John Milius meet at a party, and they exchange words, and so that just going from Pauline Kael to Sid Charisse to John Milius, Big Wednesday. When I can do that, it's like if I knew how to play pool better, if you could do like a 3-cushion bank shot and get something in the hole,
or be planning out your 4th shot after that shot.
Right. So that's that to me is so fun when I can make those connections. And I've known this for decades. So I remember doing a piece on Fred Van Dyke for Surfer's Journal, and I remember I must have read somewhere a long, long time ago that if you're going to do a profile on someone, it isn't about that person as much as it is the topic I wanted to write about, this is about 20 years ago, was the aging surfer. And Fred Van Dyke at that point was 75, and I think I was 40 or something. And so the piece was called Winterland because Fred was getting older, and the whole thing was Fred Van Dyke, and he's so much more interesting when I'm bouncing his whole thing off of the history of surfers getting older. And there wasn't much of one a long time ago. Fred was one of the first generation who's kind of kept surfing as he got older.
Yeah.
And so it was Fred talking about getting older and how his own interest in surfing was going down. And at the end of the piece, he said what he wanted to do was put on swim fins and just go float in water, like he did when he was a kid in San Francisco. And every now and then maybe he'd flip over and ride a wave in on his belly.
It's sad how much that appeals to me right now.
Right. So every profile that I did, all the good ones anyway, usually had I don't know if I'd call it a theme, but a second topic besides the person. The person was the vehicle that would get me into this other topic.
And Steve Pesman, I think, was the one who told me at some point, he's like, when you publish a photo in the surf magazine, the caption, rule number 1, never describe what's happening in the photo. Create the context or the backstory or whatever else, but you can't say, this is Brock Little standing tall in a tube at backdoor.
Right.
That's stupid.
Yeah, it's funny, but that whole caption thing is so funny because Pesman, go ahead, you finish your thought.
But no, it's to your point exactly. The reason I read that joint that came through was because in the little synopsis of text that shows up on your phone, film critic Pauline Kael, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm interested.
Right.
If you would have said the results of the 1989 Pipe Masters were, I would have been like, delete.
See, here's again, thinking about like hats that we all put on to do what we're doing. Like I have to sit there and think, what's going to read, like, you pull your phone up and you go, okay.
You don't have to think of that.
Well, you do a little bit because I think you're right. If you make that first few words have to be eye-catching enough that someone wants to hit the open on it, and
well, I guess what I mean is maybe you have to think about that a little bit, but what you need to think about first is just staying true to yourself and telling the interesting story.
I totally agree.
Once you're telling the interesting story, then it's going to resonate.
I'm just still finding this whole thing because when I was writing books, so right before Teddy was born, actually maybe just right after Teddy was born, that's when History of Surfing came out, and I spent 3 or 4 years working on a book, and I had a calendar where every day I put my word count down, 1,200 words, 1,500 words, 700, and like I did that for 3 years. That's all I did. I didn't get a MySpace page. I didn't sign up. I didn't do any social media. This was on like 2010 or maybe 2008, 9, something like that. Because I was a writer. I don't need to do all that. I'm a writer. And then the book came out and they were saying, oh, do you, can you tweet about kind of what? And I'm not going to, can you go on this podcast? No, what's a podcast? I didn't do any of that shit, right? So this whole thing with 10 years of now having my own website is I'm still learning it, is how to wear all those hats. And I'm still loving trying to figure out what works on Instagram. I don't do an EOS Twitter, but the Instagram thing has been really fun for me to figure out what works on that and what doesn't work.
I don't open it for 2 weeks at a time, and I love when I do. And when I post and I do stories and I engage with people, I totally love it. Mm-hmm. I just don't have the time to do it, and so
I also don't know if it means anything for what you or I do, but
I enjoy it. It's entertainment for me, but it ultimately, if I'm not doing it for 3 weeks, it doesn't affect the business. The business still exists without it.
The only reason I would say it would affect your business or mine is that I do feel like some people like coming upon your name or your podcast and they go, oh, I'd like to know more about this guy. And I always find when I do that research, the first thing I do is to go see when was the last time they posted? When was the last time? And if it's been a few months, I go, oh, well, he's not even paying it. I don't give a shit. So, you just keep it up, because people who are just sort of doing a little investigation into you should know that you're on it at least every week. So.
I guess, but for the thing that I need to make sure I publish regularly is the podcast itself.
Absolutely.
So I don't mind if the Instagram is dormant. It doesn't matter, because all the other surf podcasts whose Instagrams are active haven't actually published a podcast in 2 months.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. So
the bread and butter is being published. That's again, I only have a certain number of hours in a week. Instagram is bumped down because I'm producing actual podcasts. Those hours are dedicated elsewhere. I'm not sitting on the sofa doing nothing, you know? But the tangential conversations or the context creating for that Milius story is key. The fact that Tyler on Cocaine and
Rhinestones.
I want to say surfing. Cocaine and Rhinestones. The fact that he does all those tangents, whether or not it ever connects back, it's entertaining. He's a great storyteller. It's all entertaining. If I hear that Kelly Slater is interviewed on a podcast, I hope to God that he's talking about flat Earth and vaccines and all this. I don't want to hear him talking about when he won a world title. I already know that story. I was paying attention, you know, like I'm more importantly, forget about a podcast. If I just had dinner with Kelly, I would be more interested in having conversation about the kind of things that are going on in life, not about surfing
I'm
itself.
not sure if I agree with that because I only want the tangents to go if I want to feel like that I'm in good hands. Like, I don't actually want to hear Kelly Slater talking about flat ice. Like, I don't, then I'm just going to go
fair.
Step away, you know? So what I think though, is that if you're just talking surf, like I remember hating this ad the day I saw it in like 88 or 89, which is that Instinct ad, surfing is life, the rest is details. Like, hey man, I surf, like putting a value on the fact that you don't do other stuff when it should be just the opposite, right? And I remember the first thing that I think I liked about Derek Riley way before I met him was that in his captions, in his articles, whenever he's talking about something, he's never very far from making a comment about an architect or a movie actor or something else that isn't in our bubble. And so he's always paying attention to stuff. And I so as much as I think that he's I don't know what Derek is. Derek is his own, you know, he is he's engaged. That's what I'm trying to say. He's really engaged with the greater world. And then I think that the person who does put surfing front and center to a degree that blocks other things out, blocks other experiences out, you eventually you're going to become stunted from it. So the way to have a longer life in surf is to do all this other stuff and come back to surf. So like, I'd like to come back to surf more often in my real life and all, you know, maybe even in the work life as well. But I like, at this point, the big thrill for me is when I can, I can't get away from that pic. If you go to the Sunday joint last week had this picture of Sid Charisse in that dress with Fred Astaire, and the background of the photo is green. It's lime green, and so many of the surf photos it's all blue. Like this lime, it's like almost like a unnatural lime green. And like even when I just find a color that isn't found in surf, I get kind of excited because it's so blue. Like so it's too blue. So anyway,
how was your dinner with Kelly
last week?
Yeah.
It was fine. It was funny. He came in. There was like 6 of us at the restaurant. This was just stuff like I just got off the plane from Seattle to Orlando. We got picked up, went to this restaurant, about 6 of us. And Kevin Miller, the co-founder of the Florida Surf Film Festival, was at that moment just finishing up 18 holes with Kelly. And Kevin had been wanting to golf with Kelly since, forever. As long, it was. And Kevin shot like the round of his life or
No
something.
way. Good for him.
But Kelly shot a 28 on the back 9, like something like pro level, like something insane, like he was getting eagles and shit. So Kevin couldn't even really, like, you know, so anyway.
So Kevin did the best he could do, and it was still pale.
But I think that even if it wasn't, he would have, I think he was very proud because he had shown, you know, he golfed well in front of. But, you know, Kelly came into the restaurant that we were in, and I didn't see him come in, but then I look over and he had his hand out. He said, "Hey, Matt, how are you?" And he has a great memory. I didn't think he was going to, I haven't seen him since 97 or something.
Oh my gosh.
You know? So he said, "How you doing?" And he went around and shook everyone's hand and then went to this far end of the table and just talked to the 2 guys he was with mostly, you know. And I don't know. I was just, you know, I was talking to somebody outside about Kelly, and I was saying, does he live here now? We were in New Smyrna, or does he live nearby? Does he live in Cocoa? And everyone said, I don't think so. Like, I don't think he actually lives anywhere, you know? So I was just sort of sitting there thinking I'd left Seattle about 8 hours earlier, and I was already kind of homesick.
No way.
It's like, you know, not quite, but like what it means to be 50 and that sort of footloose. And one of the guys I was with who was my age said, "Oh my God, that would be the best thing ever." And I looked at him and I thought, God, I couldn't do it. No way. You know, and I think he just has boards. I don't even think he travels with boards. I don't know if he travels with anything but a backpack or a carry-on and a credit card, and which he probably doesn't need, because I think wherever he goes, he's probably picked up. Yeah. He's got boards stashed, and I
think he does travel with boards sometimes. I'm sure he has boards in Hawaii, in California, in Australia, maybe a couple of other places. And then if he's going somewhere else, you bring boards with you. But it isn't as if he is that footloose and fancy free. I think his solution was that he created homes all around the world. And so it's not as if he's nomadic. It's that he's going from one home to the next.
Yeah.
And I'll be back at this home in 3 months.
Right. See, I think that's I don't think that's a proper definition of a home. And I was kind of making this case that that's not a home. That's just like, then I also thought, hold up, like his whole life is, his whole thing being, he's been a famous surfer since he was 12 or 13 or something. And like, whatever experience he's had being that famous from that young and still being at almost 50 where he's at, like, that puts him in a place that it seems whatever I have to say or you or anybody else doesn't matter, because there's no baseline for what he's doing. For all I know, it's a miracle that he's not a completely fully neurotic. Just the fact that he's got it together as much as he does, given what he's been through, is probably a small miracle, you know. So good for him. I went and talked to him. He was pleasant. We had a nice conversation. And
what do you talk about? Do you talk about surfing?
One of his, I don't know if it's his manager or his former manager, but Terry Hardy is on the EOS board. So I went up at some point and I said, I somehow brought up Terry to Kelly, and I said, I put Terry on my board because he's my age, and we just like to talk about how hurt we always are. And he looked at me and he goes, "What do you mean your board?" And I go, "Encyclopedia of Surfing," and he nodded. So I don't think he knows, but I'm not sure if he
hilarious.
I don't think he knew what that was. But the minute we got over that, and then he started telling me,
amazing.
So Terry Hardy and I do get on the phone all the time and talk about, oh, my back. Yeah, well, I got my ear drill, but the good thing about getting my ear drill is now my knee feels better. Like, it's all this stuff like that. And so that's what Terry's he's been on my board for, I think, a year now, or just about. And, part of that is that he is in touch with the whole, the industry that doesn't have anything to do with EOS. But I thought, well, part of it was, first of all, he's super, super smart. Every time I talk with him, just shooting off the hip, he's got ideas for things to think about for the betterment of EOS, Yeah. So it's always instructive for me to just sort of listen to what he has to say. 'Cause again, I don't have a business head, and that's what he is. He's great at it. What was my train of thought there?
You were talking to Kelly about
Terry. But what I was going to say is mostly though I don't talk business with him. I just like to talk to somebody who's he also has an aging parent as I do, so we'll talk about that. Just rolling our eyes the whole time, and also just knowing that we're lucky that we still have a parent at our age, and then his daughter is the same age as Teddy, so then we talk about our kids, and then like 90 minutes have passed and we've said nothing about EOS or anything, right. And then we had a board meeting 2 weeks ago, and it was just on the phone with the nine board members, and the fundraiser's coming up, and we all got to do great, and that's sort of it again. So like, I don't know. That's what we talked. Kelly and I talked about Terry Hardy, and Kelly was saying you have no idea what how much Terry is always getting hurt, or someone in his family is getting hurt. So it was like we riffed on this thing. So that was all.
Back to the fundraiser and back to the surf quote industry. How much of the surf industry supports EOS?
The industry supports it 0. Some people in the industry support it a little bit. But remember, I think it was 2017 when I had this SOS, like Save Encyclopedia of Surfing, where it was really at the brink. And I think I raised, I want to say it was like a little over 50,000 on that one. And there was a few $1,000 donations there. But none of that, I think maybe Tom Lochtfeld.
Interesting.
Just gave me 1,000. I'm not even sure if I should be saying it. I don't think he's anonymous. Randy Rarick always, is Randy Rarick's not a surf industry guy,
I wouldn't say so.
The money all just came from people who like the site, who like surfing, and the industry. I don't think the Encyclopedia of Surfing has any any immediate good for them and their bottom line or whatever. And whatever lip service they pay to respecting surf history, they don't care. I don't really expect them to care. It's not, I don't expect the surf industry to be to have heart or to be not amoral, but it doesn't. I don't expect it to be supportive of this. They're just altruistic. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. So I got that money. EOS was saved, and it was this lesson to me that the site is not about. I will take money all day long from anyone in the surf industry that wants to give it to me. But if they don't, I don't expect them to.
No, I'm not asking based on who should be at expectation or who should be obligated or anything like that. I'm asking from just surveying what's happening in the space. And I think that there was a long time, let's say until 2008, where there was a nucleus. And these people were at the center of the nucleus, and they supported all the people kind of coming in and around it and all that. And that thing exploded, And so you could expect support from the nucleus. And when it exploded, there's now, at this point, a new nucleus. And Rarick is certainly in the middle of that. And people who have kind of always been there are still in the middle of that nucleus. Ben Gravy might be a part of that nucleus at this point,
How do you define the nucleus, though? What are we talking about? It's not the surf industry.
The industry is the part that's changed, and I don't think there is any industry anymore. There became an industry, and now there's none. The nucleus, I think, now is defined by, let's maybe say, influencers, people who are actually influencing those who are going surfing on a daily basis.
Right.
And some of it is transactional. Some of it actually has commerce involved, but not all of it does. And so, but there is, I think, currently a group of people that are engaged in surfing in a meaningful way every day, going to the beach and actually surfing, and also creating content that's influencing people and then having dialogue with those people, And it's a little bit disbanded, but, it's like I talked to Sean Doherty, and he makes a magazine.
Oh my God, Sean Doherty's
and I talked to you, and you're doing your thing, and then I talked to Chaz, and then I talked to Surfboard Shapers, and we're all kind of connected in a very tenuous way. But there isn't a nucleus. It's not centralized anymore.
what you're talking about are the people I think who are sort of reflecting surf at this point, and I think like on that sense, the people that you've just mentioned, surfing's being pretty well served. Like I think surfing, it's interesting what's out there, and I definitely include WSL if we're talking about the contest. You know, I have disagreements with the schedule. I have disagreements with all the extra stuff that's going on. But what the WSL is doing with the way CT events are presented is better than it's ever been, you know, ever. I mean, I think that having a comment thread open and having a stream that's nice and clean.
Totally.
And, you know, the whole thing is great. But
I don't want to take away credit from them, but that's just technology has allowed them to do that. You know what I mean?
I don't want. I agree. I don't want. And I do think that if there were people there, if ELO were actually listening to anybody, you could, over the course of between now and dessert after dinner. So here we are at 4:00. By 8:00, we could have a great. We could improve the whole WSL thing by a many-fold.
Yeah.
Never mind. I still feel like even with the Trestles thing, I don't think Trestles was the right spot to do that.
Right.
But the whole idea of having a playoff day of at the end of the year, I think that was a legit thing to do. Even if it maybe isn't the way we want to end up going, trying to doing that was a great move. So anyway, I'm happy with a lot of that. But WSL aside, what you're talking about with Surf Splendor and EOS and everything Sean Doherty's doing, and Ben Gravy, that's just, man, that's all people working out of their kitchen.
Which is better.
I agree. Yeah. I guess I agree.
So when you look back to where surfing really, the seeds of that, quote, industry that ultimately imploded, when you look at the 70s and the 80s, it was people out of their garage. It was people not getting paid to do what they were doing. They were doing it for the passion.
Right. The difference is that you're doing what you need to do at the level that you probably want to do it. If anything, you might want to downshift a little bit. Same with Ben Gravy. What I wanted to do, and I'm putting sort of this in the past tense, but I wanted to it a couple of years ago, like get every issue of Surfer magazine scanned.
Right.
I wanted to get every surf movie ever made digitized, and so
it needs to be done. It's a great goal.
But so that was instead I'm doing so. Calling it the Encyclopedia of Surfing is it's ambitious. It's aspirational. It's not what it actually is. Right. At one point when the book came out, it was pretty close to being an actual encyclopedia. And now again, I don't have the. So what this fundraiser is about coming up, there's two things. It's EOS is built in WordPress, which has been great. I love WordPress, but the site's now almost 10 years old. WordPress itself is aging out a little bit, and there's this whole thing that I kind of understand but don't fully, called going to a headless CMS. And we're going to go headless next year. And that means EOS is going to look the same, but we're knocking the entire thing down and building it back up. So this whole cockpit pilot that I can operate, and only I can operate, like how many different things there are that I have to push and pull and fiddle with to make EOS, we're just going to run a swinging metal ball, a wrecking ball through that and rebuild. And it's going to be for the better, but it's going to be a giant hassle. It's going to be really expensive, and that's going to occupy much of the next year. Fortunately, I've got Mark Auger. I don't know if you met Mark. Yeah. He's on it. He's going to, be on point. So all I have to do at some point, he's going to say, okay, next week we're flipping over to the new one. Get ready to, and then I got to start this learning curve on how to operate a whole new cockpit. That's okay.
Yeah.
So the fundraiser is to get that. And by the way, going headless allows EOS to move into the future really smoothly, where right now we're patching things and it's just all kind of getting a little old and creaky, like an old house.
Yep.
But really what I want to do is be able to hire someone full-time so I can put up more pages, Yep. I mean, there's just all that stuff that isn't getting posted, all of the contest results, all of the magazine articles, all this stuff that isn't even on anyone's mind to digitize and keyword and archive and also put a spotlight on. If I had a great fundraiser and I could get another hire, then I can just do way more of that than I'm doing. So that's...
When does it kick off, the fundraiser?
December 6th through 16th.
Got it.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of surf-related questions that I haven't even got to yet.
Yeah.
And they're really not important because our conversation was fine without them. But let me get a second cocktail.
Yeah, I'm gonna nurse this one because if I make a second one...
I know.
So are we on? Are we still on right now?
We're still on.
So last time when you and I did this same thing at my house...
I talked you into it.
No,
you didn't want to do a second one.
And what I remember was the first one. What I need to do to get my head ready to do something like this and just be even conversational is so complicated. And I don't have to take beta blockers anymore.
That's good.
But I do have to be caffeinated to do it. So like the first stop before I got here, when I got off the freeways, I got a double espresso, which followed the one I had about 3 hours ago. So I can kind of monitor where it's, and then I know that if I have one cocktail on top of the double espresso, I'm pretty good.
God, you're weird.
But the second one, so when you and
you're
I had
a weird human being, man.
I know, definitely. But the second cocktail, when you and I had the last time we did this, I remember going, I'm just getting dumber and dumber.
I remember you saying that. It was not noticeable.
All right.
Even though you said it.
You want to put a pin in it, right? And
I'm going to get my second cocktail, but I want to talk cocktail recipes when I get back.
Okay.
I'm going to leave everything recorded.
That's fine.
I'm going to make the second one off of your... Yeah, different conversation for a different time.
All right.
So back to cocktail recipes.
So you just made your second one.
I did, based on your recipe. So what I made for you before you walked in the door...
Well, we should tell them we're drinking Manhattans.
We're drinking Manhattans because that's your drink of choice.
Right, nightly. One a night.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay. Yeah. 7 days a week.
The only time I don't drink a Manhattan is if Jody's not in town, or if she's gone, she goes out. I don't go out. And then when she's out, I just drink wine. And if I'm out with the surf guy, my friends up in Seattle who surf, we usually just drink beer. But Manhattan is 5 or 6 nights a week.
Okay. So when I was at your house, that's what you served me. So I said, all right, let's do a round of Manhattan.
You had it before though, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So what I made for you is actually the perfect Manhattan.
Which is half red, half white vermouth?
Yes. See, I didn't think you would know.
I don't
know why I didn't think you would know.
I didn't notice it drinking it, but it's a really good Manhattan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so a traditional Manhattan is 2 parts rye.
Not bourbon, you're right. It's rye. That's right.
See? Okay.
Yeah.
2 parts rye, 1 part vermouth, and 2 dashes of bitters. The perfect Manhattan is the bitter or the vermouth portion is half sweet vermouth and half dry vermouth.
That's right.
So that's what I served you. Was
this rye or bourbon?
That's rye. That's
it is
Rittenhouse rye.
Right. Okay.
So I have a couple of different bourbons here. Today I went out and got the rye specifically to make you the perfect Manhattan.
Right.
And I did do the 50-50 dry and sweet with the 2 dashes. I, to be honest, had never had it before, and I didn't like it as much. The dryness I could absolutely taste. I like bitterness, but I didn't like the dryness.
So one of the times I went to Florida for the Florida Surf Film Festival, I don't know if this is one of the times you were there or not, but I tried to make a Manhattan at Kevin's dad's house. And everything was there except the
Mar-a-Lago.
Mar-a-Lago. Everything was there. I need to do a sidebar real quick.
Yeah.
I got a donation last year from Kevin Miller's wife, right? I was so stoked. Yeah. And I sent her an email back saying thanks. And I said, I just love coming out there. I love going to Kevin's dad's house and rating the alcohol. I just make a little joke about rating the bar. She goes, ha, ha, ha. Well, we knew you were doing that. That's okay. And I realized it was from Kevin's mom.
No way.
So, and she didn't,
because it said Miss Miller,
right? So
it didn't say Morgan.
No, it didn't. It was from Kathy.
Snap.
But Kathy thought it was hilarious, and I think I fessed up to her saying, "Oh my God, I thought you were Kevin's wife."
That's so funny.
But what I was going to say is one of the times I rated Kevin's dad's bar, he was out of red vermouth, and I didn't know better, so I made a Manhattan with all dry vermouth, white vermouth. It was terrible. It was undrinkable. Like I literally dumped it out.
Interesting.
So this had, but when you do a dash, you have a heavier hand with that than I
like bitters
than I do. Yeah, I do too.
So another sidebar. I don't know where we're coming back to.
Man, this may not get back to surf, except that we're just ride it. We're riding.
Yeah. Okay. So Kevin Miller's dad's house. The first time I went to the Florida Surf Film Festival, I don't know if you remember, but there was that storm at the airport. So we were on 3 different planes. You, Chaz, and I were on 3 different planes.
Right.
And Kevin is on the ground texting us.
And lightning was going off as we were on planes. I mean,
Yeah. So my plane got diverted, I think, to Tampa temporarily, and then sent back to Orlando.
So you were on Orlando, left for Tampa, and
we were
back?
circling Orlando waiting.
Oh, right.
And then they're like, I think we needed fuel. So they're like, let's down the plane in Tampa, refuel, and then go back to Orlando. And you and Chaz were like, oh, well, we're going to land before you. You guys ended up driving to Winter Park.
Chaz gave me the wrong directions.
Yeah. So I ended up getting to the restaurant before you, even though I landed later.
Yeah, I remember.
Anyways, that's not the point. The point is, because we were going to be arriving late, Kevin goes, hey, rather than driving all the way back to New Smyrna Beach tonight because everybody's getting in late, let's just crash at my dad's place. And I had never met Kevin before. I had never been there before. And in my head, I'm like, I don't know. These guys invited me out here. One version of this scenario is us sleeping in his dad's sleazy apartment in Orlando it probably doesn't even have a bed for me. My face is going to be against the carpet that the dogs probably peed on.
Right.
Like, fuck, I'll just get a hotel on my own. I don't want to be reliable on this Kevin Miller that I've never met before, So we land, we go to dinner, and we're going to go to Kevin's dad's place. And I'm just like, great, dreading it. Turns out Kevin's dad's place is, we call it Mar-Lago. It's nicer than Mar-Lago. It is a palatial estate. Kevin, we enter, Kevin's dad and his mom weren't there for whatever reason. They were traveling. And Kevin's like, hey, Dave, you got that wing. He didn't refer to it as a wing.
I know.
But essentially, you have that wing of the house. And I walk a quarter of a mile down my wing of the house, and I have all of these rooms. And I was like, the plushest carpet, the plushest bedding, the plushest everything.
I remember to get to the room I was in, you went into a sitting room, and then through a small little office room, and then you got to the bed, which was connected to an enormous bathroom. And there was a lot of just within and all of that is behind the same door that you're allowed as a guest. So there was going to be nobody else in that sitting room, the office, or the bedroom.
Right.
And coming out of that the next morning, I literally didn't know to turn left or right. I finally had to listen for voices and follow voices downstairs.
Totally. I went down to the dock.
Right.
To try to take a photo of the house. The house wouldn't fit in my camera's field of view.
Yeah.
Carrot Top lives over there, though. We know that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Carrot Top lives over there?
Yeah.
Carrot Top.
Yeah. So at any rate, I said that I had a bunch of not a bunch, but a few surf questions to ask to you. You were at the Florida Surf Film Festival last week. Did you watch Ben Gravy's documentary?
I watched it before. I'm on the jury, so I watched before.
So the question is, had you ever watched a Ben Gravy vlog prior to watching his documentary?
Yes.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Yeah.
Are you a fan? Are you staying current? And are you watching Nathan Florence's? Are you watching Koa Rothman's? Are you watching Nick Von Rupp's?
So rather than talk about any specific vlog, I'll say that I have a hard time. I shouldn't even say I have a hard time. I have no interest in watching anything that someone's doing because someone's got a camera on them. If there was no camera, this wouldn't be happening. I don't give a shit.
Got it.
And so why Mason Ho gets a pass on that, because I know that to some degree, he's talking to the camera or whatever, but he is just, I feel like Mason's just living his surf life.
Agreed.
So I'll watch everything that Mason Ho puts out, everything I watch, even with all that shitty Jimi Hendrix fucking outtake music he puts on there. I love it all. And I love even listening to Mason Ho when he talks really seductively about his boards at the end. You know, I even listen to that because I can tell.
It's so seductive.
I remember what it was like to look at boards and just feel that into them, you know? And so there's nothing about the Mason Ho ones that feels, well, part of it, no, it does, it feels amplified because that is his job to be that person, but
he's that way off camera.
I know
I've spent time with him.
So I'll watch everything that Mason puts out and anything else that's being made because someone sees an avenue, someone sees their lane, someone sees a thing.
Fascinating.
I don't give a shit about it.
You nailed it. I very much relate to that. But so I guess the follow-up question to me, which you've already answered by saying it's the encyclopedia of the 20th century surfing. The question is, how do you and I stay relevant? If this is what we're doing and we're producing surf content, how do you and I stay relevant if we care less and less about everything? You said from 20 years ago, you stopped caring about the films and the whatever. Right. And I kind of feel the same way, is I'm so myopic and persnickety in like what I actually care about in surfing now.
How much of what you do in all of the various people that you talk with, how much of it is current and how much of it is talking to people who are old like me about stuff?
So left to my own devices, I veer towards old and just the same old things and what I want to redo over and over again. And I'm forced by listeners usually to say, hey, Nick Von Rupp is killing it. You should watch Nick Von Rupp's blog. Right. And now I'm interested to talk to Nick Von Rupp.
Right,
you know?
Right.
But I'm recognizing that the culture is moving on without me. And it's kind of in my best interest, and not just business-wise, but like personally, to actually embrace it.
Well, if you've surfed most of your life like you have, and if you're sort of invested in this, not money-wise, but in terms of who you are, it's a little bit of a soap opera. You just want to see what's sort of going to happen next. So I can never stop thinking about or talking about to the last podcast I did, the guy from Kookcast, who I really like. His name's Christian something. I don't mean I really. I'm not being untrue to you.
I got love for everybody.
I can never stop thinking about or talking about what it means that we've now got artificial surf the way we do. So I don't want to go ride artificial waves. I think it's, it's an absolute, it's a game changer is too small for it. Surfing's taken a turn that it'll never sort of be what it was. But I'm fascinated to see how that's going to develop because I've kept up with the whole surfing, not soap opera, the whole series of it, the whole 100-year mini-series up to this point. And really, wave pool technology didn't really matter until Kelly's clip dropped. And then it just changed. Like, to me, I've said this before, if we unscroll a timeline from this end of your room to that end of surf history, the only black mark, the only mark that I would put to say this is before and this is after is the day that Kelly's wave pool dropped. That's when it changed, right? And I mean, I literally, like, almost on a daily basis, go back and forth between, would I go ride it again? I rode it that one time. Were you there the day I rode it? Yeah. And I've passed up.
The day I wrote it?
Sorry.
The day we wrote it.
I know.
Okay, geez.
But I've passed twice. I've been invited twice and said I don't want to go.
Wow.
But I think I'll go next time, right? I don't want to go because it feels like the end of and I don't mean to be dramatic, but I'm 61. I went out surfing yesterday. And to me, it's like I only surf these days. Almost the only reason I surf is because I'm still able to paddle, stand up, and angle, and kind of tuck my back knee a little bit. And if a section comes to me at the end of a small closeout wave, I can kind of bank off it and go down. And I go, okay, look, I can still do it. And it's like a big deal to me to be able to think that I can still do it. Today, the surf was just as good as it was yesterday in Manhattan Beach, which means not very good, but it was really, really sunny and clean. And I didn't want to do it. Why? Because I did it yesterday. I already know I can still do it, right? So there's not a lot left in it for me. But I hate the idea that the last great wave I'm going to get, the last long, shapely, hollow wave, is going to be in a fucking pool. And you know what? I've already done that, because the last shapely, long, hollow wave I got was when I was with you at Kelly's wave pool. That was the last.
In the desert.
In the fucking middle of.
So it doesn't have to be. I mean, you could book a trip.
But see, I also don't want it like what am I doing then? Chasing my past, you know?
No.
Like, I don't know.
Chasing your best wave.
I don't know what's.
I love the idea. I interviewed Jeff Hackman in Kauai 2 years ago.
Right.
And I love the idea. His goal is to surf to 100.
I know, him and Felipe.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, I'm still going to get the best wave of my life at Hanalei. When Hanalei turns on and it's freaking 20 feet, I'm still going to go out there and get the best wave next time.
I wish I felt that. I really wish I felt that. And I think that part of what was so weird about, or the thing about me that is a blessing and a curse, is that level of ambition. So if I really want to try at something, I will move heaven and earth to do it. So I've learned all the things I've learned in terms of being able to make this website was all because I will never, ever give up on something that I want to learn how to do. And if I don't want to learn how to do something, I can't, I also, by the other side, I can't learn it. Like, I don't want to fucking learn accounting. At one point with EOS, I go, I've got to learn accounting. That's part of the whole deal. And I tried for like 2 months. I kept signing up for accounting platforms and trying to figure it out, and double ledger entry, da-da-da-da. Finally, I said, fuck, this is the thing that I'm going to actually pay money for. And so I have an accountant that I've had for 8 years.
Good.
Not much money, and it does it for me. It's automatic. She's wonderful, and I would trust her with every account number I have, she has, and that's it, you know. But all the other stuff that I didn't think I wanted to learn, that I had to learn to be able to do what I do, Final Cut Pro and Photoshop and da-da-da, great, I'll learn it all.
Yeah. And
surfing for me was 40 years of that. There wasn't anything about surfing I didn't want to get better at or learn or do. Ambition, and it was struggle. And I don't mean that in a fucked up way. I mean, like, I just love that it was like a game that I started that had almost infinite levels of getting better at or learning more. And by the end of my whole thing, when I had it really together, maybe in my mid 40s, when I was sort of at my very peak, you know, it was a double PhD of knowledge of stuff that didn't mean anything except for what I was doing day to day. So when I moved to Seattle, I just dropped that whole thing behind me, right? Yeah. And so now when I surf, it's like I'm not working on that project anymore, and Jeff still is. Sometimes I wish I was still working on that project. But by the time I got to 50 and Teddy was born, and Jody wanted to move to Seattle, and then it's just like, okay, well that project, that 40-year project, is done. And I just want to be able to surf well enough that in my fantasy life, in my mind, I can say, you know, if I wanted to like take 6 weeks and go to Costa Rica or somewhere and just surf, I could still be really good. It's not going to happen,
right?
But when you say, like, and I know I should go down to what are the points down in Mexico? Like, you know, that was where's Barra?
There's endless points. Salina Cruz.
Like, everyone's saying, Matt, you got to go to Salina Cruz. You got to go to Salina Cruz. You got to go back to the Mentwise. And I go, you know, I should. But if I was faced with a week's worth of perfect surf, I would start immediately going, okay, how good can I get again? What can I do? Like, I would start challenging myself. And I was always a kind of angry surfer, you know? So, like, I was never happy with surfing until I'd done something that I felt, okay, you're good. I can calm down now, you know? And that's how I got to be a good surfer, was through just never not gnawing away at it, and just...
I gave that up in my 20s.
But
trying to get better at
that's
surfing.
Healthy. That's the way you should be. And I should be healthy enough to just say, okay, go get on that fucking fun board. And like, even yesterday, I'm riding a board, and I'm still trying to do turns.
What were you riding?
So my lifelong best friend, Mark Theodore, incredible surfer. He's still a daily surfer. He's 60, and he's just got boards. He's got a board room, and I just go in there and I take the biggest step up he has. So I think it was a 7.4 or something. And so I'm riding a 7.4 board that you would ride at huge Palos Verdes, for example.
So like when you say step up, like a 7.4 gunny
that you would ride
thruster.
A 7.4 that somebody would ride at Sunset Beach.
Got it.
But I've always loved riding big boards like that. I actually can't ride a longboard. I can't ride a fun board. I can't ride a fish, but I can ride a step up, a double step up, a triple step up in small waves. Right, because my feet go into the right place.
Okay.
And I'm still trying to fucking do a turn. Like, who cares if I can do a turn? Why do I just, for that matter, I should just be riding out there riding a boogie board.
Yeah. Perfect segue to the next question. Remember when David Bowie passed away?
Mm-hmm.
Every person I knew, all of whom had never mentioned the name David Bowie to me in my life, were posting on Instagram tributes to David Bowie.
Right.
And they were like, they never played David Bowie music for me when I was around them. They never mentioned the name. And all of a sudden, there's all these fans. I feel like the same thing happened with Tom Morey.
Yeah.
Tom Morey passed away. That's one part of the question. The second part of the question is, he's not a surfer. He created a bodyboard. I feel like surfers don't give the same reverence to whoever created the foil, whoever created the stand-up paddle. It's the exact opposite. We vilify the foil.
Right.
We vilify the paddle. Why is it that all surfers love and venerate Tom Morey?
Well, remember that we used surfing in the late 80s?
No.
So in
I was born in 81. I started surfing at age 12, which was 93.
Okay, so in the late 80s, people hated boogie boarders with the same, maybe even more sort of passion that people now hate.
They had that when I came up.
Right, so...
In Southern California, which I don't think in Hawaii they had that vitriol. I feel like Hawaii...
Well, they did because the bodyboarders just took over off the wall for a while.
Okay.
So I actually think what happened is that the stand-up guys come along, the foil guys comes along, and there's only so much hatred that even a hateful person can direct, and how many directions you can direct it. And the bodyboarders just sort of, at some point, you've just forgotten. It's like this country used to hate the Irish. We don't hate the Irish anymore, right?
Good point.
Right. So bodyboarders just sort of got grandfathered in. Like the hate went elsewhere.
I was wondering if it was because at a certain generation, my generation,
everyone
we all started.
That's right. So that's definitely, I think that's also part of it.
Okay.
But before we move on, Tom Morey was a really good surfer. Excellent, like one of the best surfers. He was an excellent surfer. And my whole thing with Morey, like when I was writing about him after he died, you know, the body, you lead with the boogie board sort of, but I wanted to steer it back to just, you were talking what sort of motivates me to get up and do what I do in the morning. Part of it is just that there's a certain type of surfing, there's certain core things, tenets about surf that I want to keep alive for as long as possible, which I know is a hopeless task because after there's wave pools everywhere, you're not going to care that much that it all started. It's sort of like NASCAR doesn't care that much that it started because people used to run bootleg whiskey through the backwoods. Like that's sort of, NASCAR came out of that, but it's not anymore, right? But surfing came from a time where people used to be oddballs and misfits. The ocean and surfing was, if you didn't sort of fit in on other sports teams or you went to the beach, and the surfing was just filled with people that didn't fit in elsewhere, and which I think is awesome about surfing, and it's not that way sort of anymore. But Morey, I think, was one of those guys. Morey was super bright. He had a whole career in, I think, aerospace, and gave that up to put his, to surf and create and invent. And he came up with a lot of dumbass inventions, and I don't even like the boogie board that much because I grew up on a surf mat, which were, when I first got on a boogie board in 74 or something, we'd heard about the boogie board. Oh, the boogie board, it's supposed to be really fun. Black ball, I take a boogie board out. I got on a boogie board and it was like 1/3 as fun as riding a surf mat. I loved riding surf mats. Surf mats to me you were up way higher up on the water. You could catch waves easier because they floated better. So the boogie board just to me kind of sank, and you
need fins. So
I never loved the boogie board, but I do appreciate the The Matt, on the other hand, of course, fucking they kept popping. So after a big day at Corona del Mar, when people used to ride surf mats, at the end of a big south swell, the whole beach was just littered with pop surf mats, because once they pop, you can try to fix them. But anyway, so I appreciate that the boogie board is indestructible, and Tom Morey turned on more people to riding waves than anybody else. Good for him. But what I love about Tom Morey was that he was profound, but mostly funny. Didn't take himself that seriously. He bullshitted. He was always talking. There was always a level of kind of like a circus carny about him a little bit, and I think he knew that too. And I don't know if you saw the little video I made of him where he made up the song about teach your child the boogie, and he was playing the ukulele and did this song, and he was never very far from joking around.
Did he get rich?
I don't think he was. No, I mean, he sold boogie way too early or something. He sold it for maybe what he thought was a lot of money, but ended up making 2 years later. No, I don't think he. Hey, weren't they doing like GoFundMe's for his health? Anyway, so I don't think he made any money.
Bummer.
Yeah.
Bummer.
But I liked him. I'm a Morey fan, not so much for the boogie or the bodyboard, but for his approach to surf, and because he himself, in a very happy way that appealed to people, was also kind of another misfit. Like
totally.
You had the people that had to give up something to surf.
Yep.
That's what I loved about. That's what I love about surfing. I used to love about it. When you had to make a decision to take this path, you're going to have to give up this, and this in order to do this that we wanted to do. That means a lot to me. Totally. We all did
that. These are a number of these came from listeners, by the way. Does blonde hair correlate with world titles?
No.
It
correlates with sponsorships, though.
Okay. I ran the numbers for the last 20 years. And so male and female, there's 40 world titles. 21 were blonde, 19 were not.
Do you male and female?
Male and female. Is this conspiracy of Aryan interests, overlord interests from the professional surfing?
I'd have to question.
Does melanin block surfing talent?
I would just I think what we need here are some, what are those like paint chips called, about where I need to know what your definition of blonde is. It's like, for example, was Tom Curran blonde?
No. Brown. Tom doesn't count. Tom, in my calculus for the last 20 years, got counted as not blonde.
Not blonde?
John, Stephanie, certainly Lisa Anderson.
Lane Beachley?
Lane Beachley
Even
counts
though she
as
dyed
blonde.
her hair black that one time? Yeah, okay, all right.
Kelly, the thing is, Kelly throws off the stats because he won so many titles. And he's not blonde. He's not blonde. Idolo counts as blonde.
Bullshit.
It's dyed, but it's blonde.
Did you count that as blonde for real?
That was blonde. So that's counted as 21.
Okay, so
without that, it would have been equal, 2020.
This fuckery aside, I would say that it's always been true that in terms of what the sponsors want are blonde. They want Kolohe and Dino more than they remember. I think Lewis wrote an article about this, about Kolohe and Gabe when they were young, and everybody knew about Kolohe because he was blonde and sponsored, and no one really was ready for Gabe because he was.
Well, does that have to do with the hair color or the fact that one's from the epicenter of the surf industry?
It's not, you can't get a baseline. You're right. That's right.
But I'm trying to get a baseline.
Right.
Or and is it actual genetic? Does melanin block surf talent in your hair?
What did I used to do? I was so I don't know what I would have been back in the day, because I was born brown, but I was in the water so much and my hair was down past my shoulders that it was just like blinding blonde if you combed it out right. So like
it counts.
That counts as blonde, right?
Counts, yeah.
But so then at 18, when I cut it as long as yours is, it was no longer. So I would have gone in 1 year from blonde to brown.
Did you win a world title that year?
No.
Doesn't count. Doesn't count. How'd you like that article on Beach Grit about? Was it Body Glove? It was all. It was an image of all the Body Glove team riders.
We weren't the best team ever. Who wrote that, Charlie?
Probably. But I like seeing the photo, the portrait of you from when you were young.
It wasn't the portrait that you liked seeing. What you liked seeing was that we were all in matching faux silk arena tracksuits.
Yep.
Tops and bottoms.
It was a good era.
And we had our names inscribed.
It was a good era of surfing.
Like Letterman's jackets.
Yeah.
And I look at that and I go, oh my fucking God, look at that. And the truth is, I wore that thing for 3 years. Like it had to be 90 degrees before I would take that off. You know,
really? Because you were so proud.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I was getting $100 a month from Body Glove. I was a pro surfer. It was so. There's a picture of me somewhere where, you know, to sort of customize, I would also wear it kind of unzipped down to about, you know, down to below the sternum.
Wow.
Keep it open a little bit, you know.
Man.
Yeah.
So Chaz is taking fashion cues from you.
But he said we had a really good surf team, but he doesn't know enough about how good some of the teams were back then. So I was flattered that he thought.
He didn't actually think that. It was just a clever title to draw attention to your photo.
Look, why would you send me out of here at your house saying that Charlie was bullshitting just to I mean, like, fuck, dude, you just broke my heart. I thought Charlie meant it.
I don't know that he means anything that he says.
I know.
Honest.
That's right.
Talking about earning $100 a month.
EOS?
Well, yeah, we were talking about vlogs. Like, this isn't even a question. Just add this into your awareness. There's a good chance that Ben Gravy in 2021 is going to earn more money off of surfing than Julian Wilson.
I don't know. I mean, it's whatever's popular, right? So, I mean, I can see where that would be a really popular.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. You know, again, I feel.
I made an argument to Chaz that Ben Gravy is the modern Reno Abalera. So Reno is the shortboard paragon. There's this flashpoint where there's a shortboard thing that happens, and all these old timers are like,
right,
fuck that noise. I don't give a shit. But Reno's shredding. And people are like, that means something to me, and I'm embracing it, and it actually opens this whole new window. We're old timers. Ben Gravy's posting blogs. We're going, I don't care about any of that. Except for all of these new people, they're watching it going, I do care about that. And that speaks to me. I want to ride a soft top on a river wave or a boat wake or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Despite what I said before about not wanting to watch anything that somebody would do I don't want to watch anything that somebody would do unless it was being filmed. Like, I still stand by that. But I will say that, like, there's at the bottom of that, what he's doing, there's some truth in it, which is that if you love surfing enough, you're going to figure out a way to surf anything. So we used to make little sandboards and on a flat, shitty day, we'd go sandboarding, or snowboarding came out of that. You know, I don't want to ski, I want to surf on the mountain. Like, so, or anytime you'd see, you know, just walking down a sidewalk and seeing an overhang of ivy and pulling into it, you know. So what Ben does with that comes from, like, you know, and he seems like a really nice guy. I've never met him, but like the idea of going surfing in 50 states, that does kind of appeal to me. Like, to make a living out of it seems, you know, whatever. It's not for, you know, he's not making a vlog for me, but it's coming from a place of surfing is fun. So
totally
good for him, and I can get behind that.
Good. We need to wrap it up.
Yeah.
I've relegated the family to the upstairs.
I know. Did you kick your family out just for this?
The dog too. The dog's upstairs right now. 50 pounds.
Nice. What is it?
She's from the shelter, Seal Beach shelter. Really? So we thought she was a black lab. They sold her as a black lab. She's Catahoula, leopard dog.
I don't even know what that means. Oh,
it's the state dog. There's water in there for you.
I know. I just thought that. The state dog of what?
Louisiana.
Okay.
State dog. It's a hound dog variety. So she's primarily Catahoula, a little bit of Mexican street dog, which is an actual designation now, and Chihuahua.
Mexican street dog is a designation. That's awesome.
Is, yeah.
Do you want to call him back down?
No. We'll wrap up quickly. I'm just saying I have a number of other questions we're not even going to get to, because I'm going to wrap.
Do you want to just tell me, are any of them
most barreled female on the planet? Best exit from surfing ever.
No one cares about that.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sorry. I don't mean no one cares, but I don't care what I have to.
Okay.
Okay. Just real quick. Best exit from surfing is the easiest question because it was Mark Richards. He just won 4 and Mike dropped. And then, so Mark Richards wins 4 world titles. Mike drops at age 23, I think it was. Comes back the next year to win.
Age 23.
I know. Comes back the next year to win the Billabong Pro at Waimea Bay. Comes back the next year to win the Billabong Pro in bigger Waimea Bay.
Crazy.
And that's it. So like that to me is
Mike drop, walk out, and then show up for the craziest contest of the year, win it, do it again,
right.
and still
right.
bail.
So that was like I don't even think there's anything close to that.
There isn't. Yeah. When I was texting you, Bobby Martinez cussing is funny, but he wasn't a significant.
The thing is, you don't get an. That's a great exit.
It's a good exit, but it wasn't like a significant result. You know what I mean?
Also, I mean, he was also like he'd been kind of angry for a long time.
Yes,
and,
correct.
And Mark, so maybe the thing I'm trying to say is that Mark Richards went out with a thank you.
Yeah,
it was great, and he went back to Not only did he do that, he went back and married his sweetheart and started a family, and like he moved on.
Actualized.
Absolutely actualized.
Yeah.
So
it's like I get it. Surfing was everything to me in my 20s or early 20s.
Right.
Life has other things going on.
And then he's also, to me, he is also the perfect surf legend. He's still like making boards.
I know.
He's still
airbrushing the board.
I think he's still surfing pretty well.
He does, yeah.
So good for him.
Totally.
I remember not being, I don't mean to I don't want to flip it over and talk shit. I remember not wishing that Tom Curran, he won that 3rd world title, and then he kept kind of making these feints to kind of like he was coming back, and he'd surf in a trials, or he'd surf. I think Tom Curran at some point was surfing like in the PSAA, and I was thinking that just seems like don't do that.
Well, I love Kelly, and I don't want to ever talk shit about Kelly, but I'm like, dude.
I don't know what he's doing, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You should have gone out, Seinfeld, drop the mic on the top with the most ratings. At this point, there's no chance that you beat Felipe at Trestles. Unless the waves are perfect barreling waves at Chopu, Pipeline, whatever. And even then, you're going to be trying hard to beat Gabriel, Felipe, John. There's not one venue that you could name that he would absolutely dominate.
No, he could win at Piper Chopu, but here's the thing. I don't think...
But not definitively. Those guys are going to be dropping 9s and 9.5s and
definitely.
10s. Yeah.
But I think I'm guessing at this point, and I've made so many wrong guesses about what Kelly should do. All of us have, like,
yeah.
And I also don't think it's for us to say. I think that he's on again, we're all applying normal developments in life to Kelly, and he is just so far beyond having a life that can be developed normally. He's just in a different weird thing. Not even necessarily, I'm not even making a value judgment. I'm saying that if you've been him, lived him, if you've been famous since you were 12, who knows what's good. But I think what he really wants to do is be in the mix for any given contest at age 50. So what is he, 48?
Yeah.
49?
Yeah.
So I think he wants to be...
But he wants to be in the mix.
On the beach. No, he will be in the mix if it's 10-foot pipe, backdoor, big... Like last year, wasn't it pipe? I mean, didn't he get a 10 last year at Pipeline?
Yeah, or backdoor.
Or backdoor, that's what I mean. So
he
wants to be able to get a 10, not win a contest, but get a 10 and be in the running to win a contest at age 50. And I think that's
But he hasn't been for 7 years.
He could have won that pipe event.
Not really. Like he has moments of greatness, but not with the consistency that Gabriel, Idolo, and John do.
I agree, but if you lined up 3 of those heats in a row, like he had three
heat of opportunities,
I know,
but he only does it in 1. And so it's the stats stats speak for themselves.
So what's the best result he's had in the past 3 years? A third? Has he made a final?
3 years? Yeah, that pipe result was probably the best in the last 3 years.
Was it last year's pipe? You got a third or what?
2019, where Gabriel and Idolo ended up in the final.
And
he lost to who? To Gabe?
I don't remember.
I forgot.
Yeah. But
I thought
the waves have to be that. Like even in his own wave pool, he's not going to make the quarterfinals.
Not a chance.
You know what I mean? Like
no, he'll.
But he thinks that he will, and so he's still there. And I'm saying there should have been a level of self-awareness at some point that was like, I'm going to bow out gracefully. At this point, your body's going to start failing you. You know what I mean? At J-Bay, you break a foot, and then you're out for a year and a half, and then you come back haphazardly, and then you end up losing repeatedly. And at this point, it's like the third-tier surfers are beating him in heats. Yeah. It's not a graceful exit. That's all I'm disappointed about. I'm not saying any of this because I hate Kelly. Turns out I love Kelly.
I've said this exact same thing, and in fact I wrote about it in the New York Times like 10 years ago, saying Kelly, say good. I wrote about this when he had 10. So when did he win his 11th? I can't remember. It was.
That's the thing. It was 10 years ago at this point.
I said, Kelly, you've got 10. No one's touching that. It's a great even number. Turn around and say goodbye. And Charlie, in fact, I met Charlie because he wrote a rebuttal to that. To me in surfing. And then I went to the New York Surf Film Festival. This is how long ago it was.
Smash.
And Charlie and I met and shook hands, and I realized that he wasn't a foe. He was just, we were dancing with each other sort of. And he loved that I'd written my thing, and I loved that he'd written his thing, and we became friends 10 years ago at the New York Surf Film Festival. But I wanted Kelly to leave, and I've had moments where he's paddling out going, God, I just hope he kooks out so he'll just know that he's got to leave. And the minute he takes off on a wave and starts surfing well again, I flip back over and I'm his biggest fan.
Because it's all the nostalgia that's built in.
And the 10 that he got, what month was that? Last January? When did they have pipe? It was the opening season, the opening contest, right? I always forget now. It's like, was it January or must have been January?
I don't remember. Jan-Feb.
He got the most. He got the wave that got me the most excited at that pipeline contest. Yeah. So. Whatever he was then, 47 or 48, if you're still capable of going out at that wave that is not the best wave, but possibly the most technical wave, and he got a 10 that not one of those guys could have, I don't think anyone else would have made that tube.
I agree.
So if you're making a wave that no one else could have made, hold on, keep your spot. That's.
Except the tour's not geared for that.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
All right.
Right.
Well, I love him. And I want him to. Okay.
So the next time is at my house, and we'll do the. Go ahead.
Yes. Final question. They're coming down. I just texted Lauren.
All right.
She's on her way down. Do you ever regret moving away from the beach? We kind of covered it, but.
When I come back to Manhattan Beach like I am right now, and the sun and the sky are a certain way, and the surf is small and beautifully clear water, I want to be back here so I can surf 1 hour a day.
Okay.
But no, I love Seattle. I love my life. And I may end up back down here again, but I don't know. I also have this recurring dream where I'm back living in a town that I grew up in, and it's awful because I'm still working at the surf shop, or I'm trying to get my wetsuit on and I can't get it on to surf these waves that I used to surf. So I kind of want to keep moving in the direction I'm moving. I just keep having to move north. It seems like I went from San Diego to San Francisco to Seattle, and I don't want to move to Canada. I don't think, But I don't know where it's going to go, but
depending how the fundraiser goes, you may be back at the surf shop.
See, that is it is this recurring nightmare that I'm back working at ET Surfboards in Hermosa Beach.
There you go.
It's not a nightmare. I had this dream two nights ago where Eddie Talbot, my old boss, and I were trying to figure out what he should pay me now that I'm 61. Like he's going, God, I don't know. I think you should earn more, but like I just need you to be working the floor again.
You take donations, $3 donations at a time.
Donate to US.
If we cannot increase the number of donors to 5,000, can we at least up the number to $5 a month?
That's amazing that you said that, because the last thing I talked about at the board meeting was that in 2022, I think we're going to do the first ever
increase
rate hike.
$5 would not drop anybody out.
It would make a huge difference to me and what I do.
Nobody would drop
and nobody cares, because it's still the same amount as a
3 is a ridiculous number.
All right, thanks for saying
3
that.
is a ridiculous
You'll
number.
pay $5? David Lee?
Well, maybe not me, but everybody else. No, I'm $5 a month. There's not a single person who would say, I'm canceling the subscription.
So you know what I'm going to do to chicken
And
out?
that would be almost double. Forget it.
I know.
Go 6. Double.
No, here's what I'm going to do.
Double the revenue.
Here's what I'm going to do because I'm not quite brave enough to do that. Everyone that signs up, if I do this, and I think I will have to come in at $5. But everyone who's currently subscribed at $5, I'm going to say if anybody out there can't afford it, you can stay at $3.
Fair
Enough?
I like it.
All right.
And anybody who wants to level up to 12 to cover that.
I thought about
or,
that.
Or to level up to 9 to
I
cover
thought about
up.
having a thing having a sliding scale. Set your own.
Just look, there's going to be a certain number of people that can't level up to 6.
Yeah.
So for those who want to level up to 9, cover that gap.
Everyone who's listening to this, just try the site and try the joint for 4 weeks. And if you don't like it, I will give you back all your money.
Perfect. EOS.surf.
That's it.
All right.
Thanks,
Matt,
David.
Thank you.
All right.